Of course it is. I think that it has to be something, if it's going to get any respect from the American public, that has to be perceived as not something that is totally political. I think it's clear that the Senator D'Amato's committee, doing this right in the middle of an election year, I think had charges of being just a political witch hunt. Now, I think that we have both sides being looked at and all the illegal contributions from both sides. I think that that can be done properly. But the more important thing is trying to figure out what we're going to do in the future with campaign finance reform. Both sides need it, and the American public needs it.
Well, you just commended John McCain for being somebody who has worked hard for campaign reform. Do you agree with Senator McCain that there's really been this is something that we've never seen before, this laundered money from Indonesia? It is different than a contribution from Gallo Wine?
I would say that we have not seen the degree of money being spent, the amount of negative ads, the amount of independent expenditures by both sides, and I think you see violations of campaign laws by Democrats as well as Republicans. And Senator Feingold and Senator McCain have a proposal they're going to put on the table, and hopefully we can move on from there. I think we better start talking about what we're going to do in the future instead of spending too much time on what we've done in the past.
Okay, we're going to have to take another break, and when we come back, we'll take a little look in the future and what lies ahead for both of these political parties after the election. Welcome back to Election Night Crossfire. Senator John Breaux, Democrat of Louisiana. You know, the president said that if he was elected and he got a Democratic Congress, he would mangle the welfare reform bill that he signed under protest from a lot of the liberals. Do you think that might have worked against some of your candidates in the South?
It wasn't a real issue, Bob, in Louisiana. I don't think it was an issue much throughout the South. Really, I think Senate races, as many House races, are based on what the individual candidates are talking about, what they stand for, where they've been, and what they are talking about doing in the future. Welfare reform, I think, was a positive throughout the South because people think the president did the right thing.
Where do you think the Democratic Party is going to go in the future, John? Do you think it's going to be the party of Bill Clinton, which it's hard to tell where it is, or the really strong, traditional liberal party of Teddy Kennedy?
I think and hope that it's going to be the Democratic Party of President Clinton for the last 2 years. He's been more moderate, more mainstream, more middle of the road. I think he realizes that solutions to these problems have to be bipartisan and have to come from the middle working out instead of from the far left or from the far right working in. I think that he has understood that, and I think that's the type of administration we're going to see.
Senator, looking at the exit polls this afternoon, I was really struck by the fact that the gender gap is really showing up at the polls on Election Day. In fact, if you look at the number of races that are being decided in the Democratic column, women are providing the margin of win. Last night, Susan Molinari was on Crossfire, and she said that wasn't only a problem for Bob Dole, that women were voting for Bill Clinton, it's a problem for the Republican Party. What will a Republican majority in the Senate do to start addressing that gender gap with legislation that's important to women?
I'd say, first of all, more sensitivity on environmental issues. We've got to handle those with much more concern. Obviously, the issue of Medicare has to be resolved, which, by the way, I think is scandalous, the way the Democrats demagogue that issue. I'll be interested in the president's proposal now to save Medicare now that he's savaged us. That has affected older women. And I also think that there's got to be more effort to make opportunities for women entering business. That's where women feel frustrated entering the workplace in the small business or large business, and they feel that there are barriers there, and whether they're there or not, we have to understand their frustrations. Could I also say one thing?
Sure.
In a little bit difference of what John Breaux was saying, I think that the Republicans will keep the House, and I think they will do it because of the South. So many of these seats that you, friends of yours and mine who were Democrats, those districts became Republicans. We'll take those seats, like in Mississippi. And
let John respond to that. What do you think of that, John?
Well, I think we already picked up one Democratic Republican over a Republican seat in the House in Louisiana even before the polls closed because we had 2 Democrats in the runoff, and that's pretty good news. But we're holding our own.
You know that Mike Ward, Democrat of Kentucky, is losing his race down there with over 70% of the vote in?
Bob, we're going to have a late. We're going to have a late night as far as Congress is concerned in the House. I think it's not going to be decided until when the Washington polls close really late tonight.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're right, John.
Thank you very much, John Breaux, Louisiana. Thank you very much. And thank you, John McCain of Arizona.
Thank you.
And this debate will be continued by Geraldine Ferraro and me.
Crossfire is brought to you by MasterCard. MasterCard, it's smart money. And by US Air, the airline committed to making your business travel easier.
How far can MasterCard take you? Here in Australia, MasterCard takes you into the future. The new MasterCard Cash Card. A MasterCard you can use just like cash. It's happening right now down under, and it's on its way here.
Because your business can send you practically anywhere at a moment's notice. We offer nearly 5,000 flights a day.
Nearly 250 years ago, John Wheeler purchased a life insurance policy, starting a tradition of financial planning that's seen the Wheelers through good times and bad. And today, we're helping the newest generation of Wheelers with innovative protection and retirement programs, pensions, 401ks, annuities, life insurance, long-term care, and disability insurance. Nearly 250 years of planning, protection, and security from America's life insurers.
The Teamsters Union, a symbol of organized labor at its worst. Now its president is being challenged by the son of its most infamous leader, Jimmy Hoffa Jr. Divided Unions. The next CNN Presents, Sunday, 9 Eastern.
To access CNN Interactive on the World Wide Web, call 1-800-WORLDNET, extension CNN for free internet software.
Crossfire will be back at 12:30 a.m. Eastern after most of the returns are in. We'll be talking to Democratic Congressman Charles Rangel of New York, who is hoping he'll be the next chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, and Republican Congressman David Dreyer of California, who hopes he will continue to be a high-ranking majority member of the House Rules Committee. That's Crossfire at 12:30 a.m. Eastern. Jerry, you're smiling like a Cheshire cat.
This is
Bill
something
Clinton,
new for me, winning elections.
Bill Clinton is doing well, but do you realize that Bill Clinton tonight may be doing something that no Democrat since Grover Cleveland has done, and that is be elected president without bringing in a Democratic Congress?
I have to tell you something. That doesn't bother me because when you turn around, I first of all think we still have a shot on winning both the Senate and the House. But when you have John McCain saying he's looked at where women have voted in this election, he's going to start paying attention to things like the environment, education, and things like that.
You like
That's
divided
important.
government.
I do that. In any event, from the left, I'm Geraldine Ferraro. Good night for Crossfire.
On the right, I'm Robert Novak. Join us again at 12:30 a.m. for another edition of Crossfire.
CNN now on election night is calling that hotly contested Senate race in the Tar Heel state, North Carolina. It pitted the incumbent Jesse Helms and the second time around challenge by the former mayor of Charlotte, Mr. Gant. CNN is declaring.
And that is a race that people have been watching very closely, Bernie. We'll have much more on that and on the fact that 16 states and the District of Columbia polls are closing in just a few moments. We'll be right back.
Closed captioning was provided by Bell Atlantic, the heart of communication.
Tonight on Larry King Live, will it be a Clinton landslide or a Dole upset? All the latest election news tonight, 9 Eastern on CNN.
We have a winner in the North Carolina Senate race. Republican Senator Jesse Helms is reelected.
Remember this number, 240 electoral votes needed in this election tonight. And CNN is declaring that in Texas, the winner of Texas's 32 electoral votes is Bob Dole.
Bob Dole was counting on Texas, a state that hasn't gone Democratic since 1976, and where Republicans have made big inroads. If he didn't carry Texas, he wouldn't have had a prayer.
Pennsylvania, another big electoral vote state. Bill Clinton, the winner.
This state has voted Republican at state levels, Democrat for president recently, and it's not been wrong in 30 years.
In the land of Lincoln, 22 electoral votes. President Clinton winning the state.
Talk about a bellwether state. This is one, too. All winning candidates this century have carried Illinois, with only 2 exceptions. Woodrow Wilson in 16 and Carter in 76 did not carry Illinois.
Another Midwestern industrial state in Bill Clinton's corner, Michigan, and its 18 electoral votes.
One of the most memorable moments of this campaign was when Bob Dole went back to that Battle Creek Veterans Hospital where he spent 2 years recovering from his war wounds. Michigan, however, did not vote with Dole.
In New Jersey, CNN declares President Clinton taking over this state as he did in 1992.
Bob Dole used Governor Whitman's come-from-behind victory as a model for his campaign, and the fact that she promised and delivered a very big tax cut, but it didn't work.
The state of Massachusetts for Bill Clinton, all 12 electoral votes. Missouri, the show-me state for the president, for Bill Clinton. Tennessee, the volunteer state, 11 electoral votes in Bill Clinton's corner. Maryland, a state that has gone Democratic, now has gone Democratic once again. And Connecticut, 8 electoral votes for Bill Clinton.
Bob Dole has something to cheer about in Oklahoma. He is winning that state tonight, along with its 8 electoral votes. And in Kansas, guess what? The home state of this former senator goes to Bob Dole. In Maine, President Clinton takes off 4 electoral votes there, as he does in Delaware, 3 electoral votes there, and no surprise, in the District of Columbia, the president winning handily 3 electoral votes.
The polls have just closed also in the state of Mississippi, but it is undecided. We do not have a result yet from Mississippi. And Alabama has just gone for Bob Dole. We declare, CNN declares, Bob Dole the winner in the state of Alabama. This is a place that President Clinton had campaigned in just a few days ago. Here is a look at this hour, just a moment after 8 o'clock in the East. Bill Clinton, 198 electoral votes, those states that you see in blue. Bob Dole, 55. And the big one on that map, gentlemen, is Texas, and that's one that comes sweet to Bob Dole.
That's right. That was a very, very competitive state. That's a state Republicans have been carrying in recent elections. Bill Clinton decided to make a real fight for that state, and I think probably one of the big reasons that the Republicans wanted is the Bush family came out and really got behind the Dole campaign in that state.
What we're seeing is Bill Clinton doing very well in the Northeast and the Great Lakes states where we expected him to do well, but the South is very, very competitive. Most of those states that are still too close to call are southern states. Bob Dole carried Texas, the biggest southern state. Bill Clinton carried Florida, the next biggest southern state. The South is a battleground. When the South is a battleground for president, the Republicans are in trouble.
That's right.
We know you're keeping score out there on what's been won so far. First for the president, the states won: Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Missouri, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee. Clinton states tonight. Dole states won thus far, shortly past 8 Eastern Time: Alabama, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas.
And Bernie, by our tally, we said, what, the president has 198 electoral votes. That leaves him 72 votes shy of that margin that he must have. It's half the Electoral College plus 1 is the magic number, and he's just 72 votes away.
One of the sweet ones for the president and vice president have to be Tennessee, where in the last election they lost both Senate seats to the Republicans and the governorship. This time Al Gore probably is feeling a lot better about his home state.
All right, and we have a Senate race to call in the state of New Jersey, and that is